Thank you so much, Raphael. Hey, good morning, good afternoon as well, everyone. The session today is on what being a remote first company taught us. We've been pretty blessed, and I want to share a little bit of our history and where we're at, but I'm hoping a lot of the tips that we have today will be able to help all of you that are working from home. So if you're working from home, and I assume quite a bit of us are, please do feel free to share some of your tips, as well as ask questions around what remote first means for you and how you can be successful. This is something that's going to continue to impact us and continue to change the way we work. So hopefully y'all can see my screen, and I'll just want to give a big shout out to the team for organizing this virtual conference, and fingers crossed, excited to meet all of you in person. Usually I get an opportunity to speak in front of a live audience and actually interact with people. So pretty fortunate still to be doing some of this work and presenting remotely as well. Make sure you do thank the sponsors. A lot of times without sponsors, you can't get a conference like this together. A lot of this takes a lot of hard work as well as a lot of funds and support. So huge thank you to the sponsors that are here. And if you haven't, make sure you go and interact with them and connect with them as well. Is everyone able to see my screen right now? The sponsor slide open? All right, I've received a message. Looks like somebody can't see the screen. I could try to stop my screen for a quick second to see if it comes through, just to help out. I know that can happen sometimes, so let me just share one more time, and hopefully everyone can see it. Thank you. And if you're not aware, and if this is your first session that you're attending, thank you, I'm blessed. There is a raffle. We're giving away 3 Oculus guests all in one as well. There's a bit.ly link. Please make sure you submit the raffle. Also, please do share feedback as well. And if you're fortunate, like many of us, please make sure you're able to also donate to a charity. Sometimes something as little as $5 goes a long way. Do what you can, support not just your local community as well as those that are in need. All right, well, I guess I'll start. My name's Kanwal Khipple. Pretty fortunate to live in Canada, though I have traveled quite a bit. I've lived in the US for a little bit. I've also had an opportunity to travel and work in Europe, Asia, Canada, and US, of course. So my current residence is in Canada. I'm actually a little bit north of Toronto for the Canadians out there. And yeah, I've got subtitles here for French going as well. I'm using one of the features in Microsoft PowerPoint to do live translations in French. So for those fellow Canadians, I figured I'd be able to share that with you guys as well. My career, I started out about almost a little bit over a dozen years ago. It's been definitely more than 10, focused honestly before Office 365 and in the BPOS stage when SharePoint and was being hosted by Microsoft, and even before that on-prem. But yeah, I've had a varied career from being a developer to an architect to a consultant. I've been fortunate enough to win a few awards for some of my work that's impacted employees and some of the great teams that I've had a chance to work with. And recently, in the past 6 years, I've been blessed. I've been very fortunate to be the founder and CEO of a generous consulting company called Tutor Lead. So Tutor Lead is a remote first company based out of Canada. Majority of our employees are in Canada and all different time zones. We all work from home, and we started 6 years ago. We've experimented a lot. We knew the trends outside of COVID. We kind of knew the trends of how people work and this need to have a physical distance between each other, be able to be in the same location to actually work together was something that was going to change how we work. So we started off a company being cloud first, based off of Office 365 and doing everything there, but also being a remote first company. And you know, I think from the beginning we've always been remote first, but consulting with customers remotely did pose some challenges for some of our team members. We were pretty fortunate I was pretty fortunate in terms of being able to connect and engage with people remotely as well. That it was great to start up a company like this, but encouraging and supporting employees to grow in that fashion took a bit of time. And the important piece was, even though you are remote, how do you still build trust and how do you still connect with people remotely? So awesome. Yeah, so we've experimented with a number of ways to be inclusive, and I want to, as part of this session, kind of share with you three key things. How do we enable employees to have an impact being remote? How do we actually support their work-life balance? How do we actually support that balance of the integration of work and life? And last but not least, what are the things that we kind of did to encourage innovation through experimentation? As I was mentioning earlier, been fortunate to win a couple of awards. So have won 2 Nielsen Norman Awards. They're kind of the Oscars of intranets. I've always been focused on the impact technology has on people and their day-to-day. So I've always been focused on employee engagement, improving that, as well as intranets. And you can find me on Twitter. Feel free to reach out on Twitter or LinkedIn. It's great to see a few of you that that are out in the community joining. Blessed to have you on. Thank you for joining. All right, so I'll start off first and foremost. This is something that we have been sharing from the beginning with customers and partners. So giving you a little bit of insight in terms of how we have always positioned our company, our startup. Realistically, we've been very fortunate because we've also been presenting quite a bit. So from a thought leadership point of view, we have delivered over 500 keynotes, workshops, and sessions. In the span of 6 years, we've grown from a company of 1 to a company of over 25 employees, plus a number of contractors. And many of our employees have either been or are and can want to have that passion to become an MVP. Microsoft MVP is individual who's generous with their time and who wants to invest into helping learn from others, but also share their experiences with others. So our way of learning, our way of teaching, our way of connecting has always been driven through presenting at conferences. In the past, it was physically, and going forward, it'll be obviously much less than that and more focused on remote and virtual sessions. So this is a big piece, important, and this was something that has been part of even our sales decks. This message and the way we positioned it here was really important for customers to recognize that we travel, or more importantly, we have an impact on people outside of just where we live. And that was really important from a messaging point of view for a lot of the customers who weren't aware of remote first companies. 6 years ago, there wasn't a lot of companies that were remote first. So even if we were engaged with a customer right across our street, right across the block in Toronto, we would not go and visit them in person from the sales cycle to delivery. So it was really about encouraging them about a global presence. And another kind of message that we had for them was that in terms of our team, in terms of where our staff are, both full-time as well as contractors, we represent our presence across the board. So we've got employees across Canada and contractor network that we reach out to across the US, Europe, Australia, Africa as well. So it kind of let them recognize that time zone wasn't an impact, and being able to connect with their peers, especially for larger organizations, it's really important for them because they're just not from a single location. So one pharmaceutical based out of Europe asked if we can come work with them in Europe, in London, and we declined. We said there's definitely a benefit for doing that, but you can have that connection with our peers, not just in London, but Canada, US, and do that work remotely. So it took a bit of time, but that messaging continued to improve, and it really helped solidify and help customers understand that trust is not built through physical presence. Trust is built through quality in the work that we do. So as I was mentioning, work from home was a big part of who we are. Working from home means that you've got to have a great internet connection, and for the employees and the people that we had joined our company, not all of them were used to work from home. A lot of them would ask, hey, is there an office that we can go to? For the first couple of years, we didn't have an office, and we did experiment with an office location in downtown Toronto. But a couple of weeks before COVID, we decided to shut it down. So the reality is the office is dead. So the need to go into an office to interact just like this interactive session as well. It's being reduced with the need to physically meet in person, the need to be physically on a seat and clock in at 9 o'clock and clock out at 5 o'clock has never really made sense. It comes from the Industrial Revolution, where you had machinery and you had to have people physically there. But because we're all becoming more and more digital agents and more focused on digital life, we don't need to. The location of where we work does not matter. Now, we have run into some challenges, so we're far from perfect, but through those challenges, we've established some standards. So given that everybody's working from home and there wasn't a physical address, we had to really think about, how do we actually have those organic discussions? So those water cooler discussions, the discussions in hallways, a lot of the interactions that I've really enjoyed, the one-on-ones during attending conferences, I've really appreciated those because they are physically, you get to meet somebody, shake their hands, sit down and have a meal with them. You kind of lose out on that in work environments. So those organic discussions were ones that were lost, and we have to figure out ways in how to have those as well. Another aspect of working from home is just a little bit of a trust, right? Not knowing if your employees and your staff are actually working, whether it's in their time zone or during 9 to 5. Trust was a big aspect. It wasn't something that I necessarily struggled with, but it was something that employees needed to understand how you communicate and how you actually establish that trust, so that being at home with Netflix right next to you and your video game system, your kids, and everything else that's happening in life can be a distraction, and it can be an impediment for you to be successful. So that was definitely one challenge that we had to educate employees on. Another one was always on. Because you're at home, you've got your computer, you've got internet connection. There were and have been cases of employees working long hours, sometimes working late at night, and not being able to self-control and control the amount of work that they do or how connected they are. So we did have challenges where some employees were not able to turn off their work mindset. And last but not least was employee morale. Employee morale is hard to quantify when you are remote, and we've experimented with that as well. And last but not least, another challenge is around less time for friends and family. So these are all challenges, these are all myths, these are all blockers in supporting being a remote first company or working from home. And with COVID and where we are globally today, these are some of the challenges that people are facing. So I'm hoping today's presentation kind of goes where we'll just share some tips. I'd love for some questions that come up around scenarios. We will have a little bit of time for that as well, but we'll try to pace ourselves as well. So if you've got questions on how to work remotely today, please do share tips that have worked for you or questions that you have come up. So first and foremost, work-life balance, work-life integration, however you want to call it. At the end of the day, when you're at home, it is going to be harder and harder for you to really separate life. So today for this presentation, just so you guys are aware, I've asked my kids that I need them to be quiet because I'm presenting. I've also requested, because I need all the bandwidth, not to have Netflix on. And last but not least, don't come downstairs. Daddy is right now presenting. So that work-life integration is there for everybody and how you kind of create those boundaries. So I'm going to go a few tips here and walk through those with you, and hopefully these will be helpful. So tips on how to maintain and have a great work from home space. Really important to be focused and to be able to do the work. Now, this is something that I had to learn over time. One is designating a location. Having a space where it is just your home office. Because we're home, we have the flexibility. I could take this laptop, move to my sofa, move to the living room, go to my bedroom, go wherever I want, because I'm always connected to the internet. I can work from anywhere. However, that does create a kind of a cognitive load on being able to separate work and life, and it's really important for your mindset, your mental health, to make sure you separate that. So configure and designate a location that is only going to be for work. For me personally, it is my basement. My basement's kind of all to myself. I've got the kitchen right next to me. I've got 2 monitors set up, and it works out really well. So when I need some quiet time, I close off the door and the kids cannot come downstairs. When the door is open, they're welcome to come freely as well. So it's really important to set those ground rules for your family, for yourself. For me, the moment I leave the basement, I've turned off work and I don't check my phone. I don't check my laptop. I don't check my email. I disconnect. If I do, I go on like Twitter or LinkedIn or something else that's non-work related. The other piece is validating your internet connectivity. This is really important, something that eventually some employees invest into. But one of the things that we did from the beginning was all of our offer letters, every employment offer that we give employees, we subsidize, we pay for their internet and their mobile phone. So because we're saving significantly on real estate costs and having an office, we invested that money into making the work at home experience for employees much better. So besides full-time salary, you get a package of where internet, your telephone is paid for. And we actually do a health and wellness bonus as well. So we encourage employees that are at home to either go to a gym or invest in things that will help them be physically and mentally healthy. So that's an important one. And then, of course, making sure you continue your normal routine as well. So 3 tips: just configure your workspace, separate from your living space, your commute to work, your ground rules, make sure those are defined. Make sure your office is nicely set up, devices are secure. If you want to play some music in the background, go for it, whatever helps you. And then make sure your internet provider and investments there are well invested. If you're a business owner, support your employees and maybe look to also subsidize their internet and telephone bill as well. And last but not least, just maintain or continue maintaining our normal routine. So standard working hours, whatever those might be. That could be 9 to 5. It could be 8 to 12 and then 3 to 6. It could be when you're working 9 to 2 and then you're spending time with your kids 2 to 5 and then you're working maybe after dinner for a couple hours. Whatever that routine and schedule is for you, set that. Make sure that's clear both for your family at home, for yourself personally, as well as for the company that you work with. And then last but not least, around the contain normal routine, I think 2 last tips I'll share is dress for the office. This is something that a lot of our employees were also getting comfortable with, was, hey, I don't have to go into the office, let me just wear just casual clothing. And that's cool if you want to wear casual clothing, but we try to encourage when you're meeting with customers to be a little bit more business casual. And then of course take breaks. You can get you can get really sucked into the routine of meetings after meetings, not having to physically be anywhere. So make sure you take breaks as well. All right. The other piece I think to call out around kind of like work-life integration is making sure you're also able to support employees who are not physically there remotely as well. So a couple things I just want to call out. One and foremost, make sure you build a network within your team. So building network today at 2 Lead, we have different networks or different teams within Microsoft Teams based on the roles. The PM team has their own Microsoft team, the consulting team, the development team, management operations, the architects, the infrastructure team, everyone, the design team has their own team, a safe space for that team to kind of connect on standards and patterns and practices that really helps out. And they've got a defined set of channels that are consistent across each of the teams. So we've got a channel called Sync, the ability to connect, syncing. Each team, role-based team, has a channel where they can schedule meetings and have connects based off of that as well. Make sure, in terms of building a network within your team, is also encourage one-on-ones. One-on-ones are not just for your employee having a one-on-one with the manager, but also peer connects as well. So make sure one-on-ones are a priority. Establish and maintain. One of the things that we found really helpful, really useful, is having a weekly connect with the team, a company-wide weekly connect. We usually have that on Mondays. And those connects are honestly less about work and more about just what happened during the weekend, how things went for us, and lately we started sharing cooking recipes. Life events are shared, cooking recipes, and then we always take a little bit of time to take a step back and share lessons learned, as well as celebrate some of our successes as well. So establish and maintain weekly team meetings. and encourage more of those connects. And last but not least, just like today, turn on your video. It's really encouraged. That video goes a long way. If you can, do a blur background. You want to do a custom one. You want to do your own. It's all good. But at the minimum, if you don't want to have a background, make sure you blur your video. It helps primarily for focus and allowing people to focus in on what you're saying rather than what's happening in the background. So we try not to do fancy custom backgrounds for our customers. Internally within the team on our personal internal connects, we go crazy with backgrounds and we have fun with those. So just make sure you're respecting people in terms of what could be happening in your background, what could be happening in their background, and just being very respectful of that as well. One rule that we're trying to follow really strongly is videos for all internal meetings have to be absolutely turned on for all employees. So if you're not on an internal meeting, make sure your video is turned on. And with customers, we're trying to encourage that progression as well with customers. So some of our staff sometimes are a little bit shy. Your hair might be messy, you're just not ready, you're just not comfortable turning on your video, but we try to encourage more and more of that uptake. The other important part is creating structure for your meetings. Very important that when meetings are scheduled, that you have number one, a very formal schedule or a formal agenda in your meeting invite, whether it's an internal meeting or a customer meeting. Have an agenda that's very clear, and make sure you encourage everyone to speak up. So as part of our meetings, we also do live note sharing as well, kind of like I'm doing live translations. I'm not taking notes during this connect, but make sure you're doing live notes during your meeting as well, so people can see what is being communicated and if what you're capturing is accurate or not. The idea is not to dictate everything that's being said, but the idea is to summarize the key decisions, key discussion points that have been captured. And then make sure you schedule breaks for long meetings. Sometimes we'll have a 2-hour workshop or a 3-hour workshop. Try not to go the entire 2 or 3 hours. Try to give everybody a quick 5-minute break to make sure they can either take a step back, stretch, or even if this is not something that everybody wants to do, they just want to continue powering through, take a couple of 5-minute breaks in between and just take a step back and let people either speak up a little bit more or give them a break and you speak up. Find ways to reduce some of the pressure that a meeting can create for being interactive, engaged fully. And last but not least is learning together. The reality is kids are at home. There have been times where I'm on a presentation, I'm recording, my son or daughter will run down crying. And I think the reaction there shouldn't be to get upset at your kids or ignore them. Definitely embrace them, make sure they're okay. The customers, team members know that we're all working from home and you have this family life as well. So supporting that is really important. It not only supports your children and your family, but also lets the people that you're connecting with know that at the end of the day, we're all humans, we're all people, and we've got our own things that are happening as well. So be comfortable with the unknowns sometimes, the things that you don't plan for. And last but not least, just encourage your team to connect with one another. One of the things that we ran into during our first couple years was that when meetings were scheduled, that was the only time that we really met. And the one-on-one chats that you usually have weren't happening as much. So we started encouraging more of the teams to do that, to have those one-on-one chats and just reach out to each other, or even during a session and just do a little chat. So encouraging that time was really important, and also encouraging team members to just, if they want to schedule meetings or just reach out to others, to do that as well. When you're working from home, because somebody's not right there next to you, it's harder to build that rapport, build that relationship. All right, next up is a hard one. This is something that a lot of our employees ran into, and I think a lot of us ran into recently. We kind of got hit with COVID, with this pandemic, and our willpower in some ways. I know I've gained a little bit of weight recently in the last month or two with a lot more baking and a lot more eating. Haven't been exercising as much, but building your willpower is so important, and it's through the little things that you do, right? So if it's in the morning getting up and making your bed, great. Make sure that's part of your routine. You don't let go of that just because now you're working from home. Another great tip is make sure you're sharing progress on personal goals. So we try on our Team Connects to share personal goals. Some want to get a little bit more fit. Some are looking to learn a new skill. Others are even trying to, one of our employees said, hey, they didn't want to watch Netflix at all for the year of 2020. And just sharing progress on those, either weekly or bi-weekly, or progress across for the team was really helpful. It helped you kind of say, I'm on track with my goals, and you guys are my personal coaches. Or I kind of slipped up, and it's okay. I'm going to get back onto that. So during our weekly connects, we also tried to share our home office setup and got inspired. I shared my home office setup, and I found out that some of the team members, they were organized, no cables on the desk, and they just had a really nice office setup, and inspired me to kind of do the same as well. So find ways to share a little bit more about what you do that you enjoy, that others will say, oh, I got to do that. So as I was mentioning earlier, our weekly connects now will also be including kind of healthy eating recipes. We're going to start out with recipes and just sharing things that we kind of bake as a, here's something I ate, or here's something I really enjoyed and loved, or here's something I cooked, being able to share that. And eventually one of the things we're going to do after the summer is start looking at what are some eating or healthy eating recipes that others can quickly make when you're at home or right in between a meeting. For example, there's a way to make almond cookies in under 30 minutes, sugar-free, gluten-free, and they taste delicious. So sharing those kind of recipes just helps kind of people feel that they're able to create something and make something, and they're not attending these meetings just to do work. So that personal ability went and helped quite a bit. I'm going to speed up here a little bit. Again, feel free to ask any questions. A couple other tips that really helped out for maintaining connection with peers. That's helped out. So one thing I want to share is it's a very simple one, a good morning. And I don't mean to say sending a good morning message every day to every employee, but every now and then just reaching out and saying good morning, or before asking somebody to do something, just kind of like what you do with people in person, is like, hey, good morning, how are you? Like things are well. How's the family? And then you can kind of transition over to work stuff if you want. Another thing we've been experimenting with has been catching up over virtual coffee. We've scheduled just connects, sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon, and sometimes a little bit after 5, just to drink together. Sometimes it's coffee and sometimes it's not coffee, and nothing work related, just chit chat. That's been really helpful. And as part of those have become kind of our hallway conversations, where we'll have a scheduled coffee break that's happening, and people can jump in and just listen into the conversation that's happening. That's been really cool. And then last but not least, really can't emphasize this enough, have fun with your chats. Memes, find a way to communicate through memes and GIFs. There are sometimes times where I only do communication through those. It just it's a fun way, I think, to have a discussion, but also a fun way to kind of break out of the pattern that we all have of trying to always communicate so clearly and be on turn. So it's really important just to take the lighter side of things. So that's maintaining a connection with peers. Just a couple of quick things you can do to help your team connect. One of the things we've done as well is we've created a separate team. This was created. We had a team called Anything But Work, and it's had ups and downs in terms of adoption. Sometimes there's a lot of discussions. We're sharing news, recent news that's happening, or announcements, or just funny things that are happening, or comics. But I think recommendation going forward is, instead of creating a team, I think I would definitely create a channel in our team that's kind of more of a water cooler. Just anything goes there. It has nothing to do with work, and just be able to comfortably share that. So that's been really helpful. Another thing that's been really helpful is just sharing insights on remote working. What are the things that have helped us, me individually, to work, for example, making sure I do take a break, making sure I do get up, go grab a glass of water, or just step away from work. So I try to do that every 2 to 3 hours. That helps me quite a bit. For one of our employees, I recommended the Pomodoro technique, which is taking breaks after 20 minutes of work. Just one of the things that they needed support on was how to really focus. And sometimes we get distracted. We've got Outlook emails coming up. We've got 2 or 3 monitors at home. So there's Outlook email in one screen. You got Teams, you got music, you got your kids. So how do you actually get focused and get work done outside of everything that's been scheduled? So being able to share some of those tips and insights helped out quite a bit. One of the other things that helped out really quite a bit was, as we've grown, we've encouraged champions within each of our teams. So as a startup, we've got 3 to 6 employees per team, and instead of everyone going to the CEO for guidance, what we've done now is every team has a champion for the quarter. For the 3 months, there's one person who's going to make the decisions based on the organizational goals and make the decisions there. So, and that person would be part of that team. So the consulting team, a team of about almost 10, 12 people, there's one champion that we are going to rotate through who's going to help prioritize and help make decisions for the consulting team. So it's about removing a little bit of the bottlenecks, but also giving the team that autonomy as well. I think I've shared this before as well. Make sure there's frequent connects. I can't stress that enough. Next up is being inclusive. Being inclusive is really important. This is not just about making sure everyone's being heard, but also encouraging that facilitation, that encouraging users, employees to be able to share their progress as well. So one of the things you can do is facilitate productivity in Microsoft Teams or Slack or wherever you are. But if you've got a channel, make sure you share and encourage employees to share their progress in that channel. So today we have a team for each client that we work with, and each client we have a channel in that team for each product that we are on. So all the product communication is within that channel, and as a team starts off a thread on one of the deliverables, they have conversations and they share progress within that conversation thread to really keep things mapped out. From a productivity point of view, obviously you guys know, if you're not aware in Teams, you can pin applications that are not just SharePoint or Microsoft or Office 365. So pinning not just Power BI dashboards, but pinning external sites goes a long way. So pin important apps or resources for easy access, making it super easy for somebody not to think about what other resources are associated to this project or this channel or this team. So pin those. And then I think the other thing I would probably highlight is establish communication norms. So it's really important to set expectations around how quickly responses should be done. So one of the standards that we have across the board is, if a message is posted in any channel or any team, any channel, do not mention the team. Don't mention everybody. So if it's a generic message for everybody, go ahead and just post it without mentioning anybody. The other standard we have is mention only for action items. So if you're looking for a direct question or an answer for somebody, mention them. One of the things that we've in the last 2 years, we've noticed as our company's grown is sometimes I or others will be CC'd on Teams messages, kind of like how you do an email where you want to keep your boss informed. So I would get CC'd on some messages that had nothing really to do with me. So encouraging your employees that the CCs are not important, only mention those who are able to directly answer and resolve your questions. And then last but not least, one of the best ways to be an inclusive environment and be inclusive altogether is encouraging feedback. So finding ways to get others to speak up. So on our side, besides the peer reviews that we do, the one-on-ones that we do, we also do quarterly connects with individual team members on their progress. But we also do yearly connects. So once a year, pre-COVID, we'd fly everybody across Canada and Europe into a single location. We'd meet up at a resort, and we'd prioritize the activities and the things that we want to do for that year, which was really helpful because it encouraged employees to come forward with their ideas, and it also enabled employees to prioritize those activities for the company as well. So from year two, we gave the employees the ability to actually guide the engagements, guide the optimizations that we do, and prioritize where the business and everybody needs to focus on. That helped quite a bit in terms of getting everyone committed to it. And this year, obviously, we did a remote workshop or 2 days of remote meetings. And same thing, we had the team kind of prioritize and had a lot of great feedback as well. So encourage feedback and make sure that it's not based on roles, it's based on ideas, and encourage ideas to be shared across the board. All right, moving on to getting work done. This is a tough one, but like I said, it's hard sometimes to focus at home. I've shared some tips on getting your office set up. A couple other things to do: make sure you have a great headset, test your headset, but also in Teams, you can actually set the status of whether you want to be bothered or not. So one of the things I really encourage and that we do at the company is focus time. Because we're remote, we have much more meetings, not just with customers, but internally as well, to stay connected as a team. So we have daily connects that are scheduled, we do sprint planning, etc. Wednesdays is no meeting Wednesday. So for Wednesdays, we have no meetings across the board, customers or internally. It's a purely focused day. So you can message other people and have a chit chat with them, but there will be no work-based meetings. It's purely a heads down day to get work done. That helped quite a bit. What else? I think I already shared in terms of making sure colleagues can see you. So turning on your video is really important. I think the other thing is because one of the challenges that we ran into was there was a lot of meetings, and it did overwhelm employees. It's starting to overwhelm me a little bit, but I've been pretty good at declining meetings. When you schedule a meeting within a team, everybody who's part of that team gets invited. So it was very important to educate and help support from adoption point of view that if you're in a meeting and you're not required, you could decline that meeting, number one. Number two, if based on the agenda or based on the first 5 minutes of that meeting, you don't feel like you can add any value to this, jump off. All of our meetings at Tude Lead are recorded. So it's much better for you, if you're not going to be you're not going to be actively engaged in a meeting, then just listen to the recording at a later time. Focus on something else at that time. And it could be getting organized, it could be reviewing customer emails, or just working on some of your things, and do that as a follow-up. So that helped quite a bit. And we used to encourage making sure you're on mute. Now we encourage that, besides video being turned on, that you should just not be on mute. So unmute yourself if you're going to be part of the meeting, because you should be actively engaged. A lot of times in meetings, that question always is there. Hey, sorry, we can't hear you. Are you on mute? So to reduce that kind of questions, stay off mute and speak up. All right. Next up is around empowering employees. We've kind of talked about work-life integration, gave you guys a lot of tips. Things that have worked, that are working really well for us at Tude Lead, and that I've seen a direct impact on how employees are working, especially for those employees who were, in the past working in a physical location, not, at a company, at a large company, and now they were shifting to a startup who was remote first. So helping grow and mentor and shape their ways of doing that takes quite a bit of time. It is a behavioral change. And I think for a lot of the employees today that are now due to COVID at home, make sure you support them. So if you're comfortable being a remote employee, but you're just not getting that engagement or connection with some other employees, reach out and just connect with them and just see if you can help them. Share some tips with them on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. It goes a long way. And the reality is that to empower employees with COVID, employees are changing too, right? So one of the things that has had a big impact for us, despite being remote first, is with COVID, with this pandemic starting in February, March timeframe, it has created a lot of anxiety, a lot of mental health challenges for people, right? At the end of the day, we're just people, and we've got all this news that are happening, and it was important for us to support people as well. So employees are changing. I want to share with you just a couple of attributes we look at for people who work at home, and then as part of that, share with you kind of ways that you can support their growth. So for a remote employee, for somebody who works at home, here are the things that we look at through the interview process. Here's the things that we look at throughout their first 3 months, their next 6 months, year to year. This is what we look at. Being self-motivated, can't stress it enough. When you're working at home, that means you need to be able to be independent, and that also means you need to take initiative. You can't be self-motivated. You can't be take initiative if you don't have a very key purpose. So being focused on what that purpose is and being aware of why you're part of that company or why you're part of that project. If you don't believe it, speak up. Most important. And for a lot of employees, that purposefulness is because they're not themselves self-aware. A lot of us, when we've worked at regular jobs, meaning in the office, there was a routine that was happening. And a lot of times we were just doing things because we were told to. So getting out of that mindset was very important. It's something that we do at starting during even the interview phase, is helping employees and candidates recognize not just their strengths and weaknesses, but their passion. And that's really important, because if they have passion, they will be self-motivated, they'll take initiative, and they'll do that purposefulness that they have in place. Independent decision-making, can't stress this enough. So it's one thing to be independent, it's another thing to make decisions for that. And you have to be self-aware of what decisions you can take on your own and those where you need input from others. But the name to lead, the word lead is in there, and it was really important for us to have that independence decision-making, because the skills that we've always been looking for are leadership skills. Whether you're starting at the beginning of your career or you've been working in this industry for 10, 15 years, leadership skills are very, very important. So these are kind of the 6 kind of characteristics, kind of metrics, values that we were looking for. And as we've hired employees, the ones that some have moved on to great careers in other companies, and others who have left, there were these areas that were missing. And I think one of my lessons learned always is that I need to invest more as a mentor to support these skills that you can grow into and you can improve. So this is probably the biggest time that I invest today, is helping my team be self-motivated, take initiative, recognizing the purpose, being aware of their own skills, and be able to make decisions and be leaders in their retrospective spaces. So a couple other things I want to call out. It's very important. One of the things that I found in terms of enabling employees to actually have an impact is making sure they're able to communicate their goals. So asking employees when they can accomplish tasks is much more beneficial than asking when or how or what they're going to be doing. Peer feedback is another high recommendation here that I would encourage. Peer feedback is reaching out to employees and saying, hey, would love to hear feedback. If you can capture feedback for your peers that you worked with and share, 1 or 2 things that they should be improving on. So that's always been a big area of investment. Another one that's been great is during our one-on-ones, during our peer reviews, or during our quarterly connects, is actually doing a reverse mentoring. So I get feedback on things that I need to do better on. I am personally far from perfect, and I think all of us are a work in progress. So being able to get, for a manager to get feedback from somebody who's reporting to them is a great way to learn a little bit more about where you need to focus and learn. And I would wholeheartedly say that I am not the person I am today that I was 6 years ago. I've learned and grown so much because of the feedback of the employees and even the contractors at 2Lead. They've given feedback on what's working and what's not. Recently, one of the things that I've started doing is during my one-on-ones, I'm actually doing a walking meeting. So I've got one-on-ones on a monthly basis. I let the employee know that, hey, during this one-on-one, we're both going to get up from our home offices and we're going to go out for a walk. And we'll just have our headphones on and we'll chat. We'll just see how things are going and provide you that support. So that's been really, really helpful. And of course, make sure you celebrate growth. Mistakes happen, and I think you should. I've learned very early on, it's not about why did that mistake happen, but what did you learn from that mistake. So through reverse mentoring, through getting that feedback, being able to celebrate those lessons learned has gone a long, long way. All right, and kind of the last section and the last set of tips that I'll share with you guys is innovating iteratively. I personally, I don't know about you guys, but I've personally loved the high quality images that PowerPoint now has, like the clip art in Word, Excel. So these are all images there. I had a lot of fun with it, and it felt like this was the right thing. Even for me, when I had a pinata and I had to like knock it out, it takes a couple tries, but eventually you get it. And that excitement you get when you actually smash that thing open and you got candies and toys all over the place. That's honestly all it is about, is you got to innovate iteratively. You're going to take a lot of chances and you're going to miss a lot of times. But as long as you're not repeating that same mistake, you're in a good place. And for us, our employees do innovate frequently. They make a lot of mistakes, but we learn very quick. And that growth mindset has helped us quite a bit. So in that perspective, I'll share a couple of things that have worked for us. One is change the meeting behavior. So have shorter and deliberate meetings. As I shared earlier, for innovation to work, meetings should not be just about discussion with no clear endpoint or outcome. Make a very focused agenda and drive towards that. And if you have time remaining, disconnect if you need to. It's okay, right? Focus on the outcomes and have meetings focused on that deliberate action. There's been some times where employees will schedule a 2-hour workshop and the discussions only lasted 30 minutes, right? So start with a smaller, shorter meetings and work from there. And then make sure you increase a better plan, invest more time. Something that I learned is for having those informal meetups and those informal connects. I had to not just figure out a schedule, but a good rhythm on making sure that I don't lose sight of the informal aspect of meeting people and connecting with employees. So creating a little bit of predictability, because of you can't socially do that. You don't have a water cooler. Create those abilities for yourself. As I was mentioning earlier, make mistakes. Make as many mistakes as possible. One mistake I've made, and I share this pretty often with new employees, is I deleted the 2Lead website off of Azure. 5 years ago, we had our 2Lead website, and I was just playing around with Azure. I clicked delete resource, and apparently ended up deleting the entire site. We had to rebuild it from scratch. That was fun. And I would say I make mistakes often. I delete a lot of things. And every year there's usually one thing that I did wrong that everybody has a good laugh about. So I wouldn't say it's planned, but I would say is that I'm glad that I make mistakes because I do learn, and I'm hoping that's something that encourages others as well. So we do the same thing with customers. So with customers, we have monthly connects to share things that we didn't do well, but also to share feedback with them on things that they didn't do well. And that's something that surprised a lot of customers. They weren't expecting feedback that we give to them, but it's helped them a lot recognize that this is a partnership, this is an evolution, and that we have to work through it iteratively. So making mistakes, sharing some of those mistakes through lessons learned, lunch and learns, through even like a showcase with customers is great. We do sprint retros, which have worked really well. And last but not least, like project steering meetings are really effective as well. You can call it project steering meetings. You can call them release meetings. You can call it a health checkpoint, whatever it might be. Share feedback with employees, share feedback of what's working there as a company, as well as with your customers as well. And as I mentioned earlier, celebrate growth. As you make mistakes, you're going to learn. From, let's say, project completion is done. So one of the things that we weren't doing a good job of is once a project wrapped up, we would move on quickly to the next project. So you go from project to project, and it eventually kind of waited on us because you never got a sense of accomplishment. And the last 2 or 3 years, we've been celebrating a lot more, almost on a weekly basis. Our product is wrapping up, a new feature's been deployed. Customers reached out and said, "Hey, you guys are doing a fabulous job." So sharing more of that openly with the entire team on our Monday Connects has helped out. Showcasing to your peers on progress you're making is also a great way to do that. So the architect team, the consulting team, the dev team, the PM team, they all on a weekly, bi-weekly basis share something that they've learned as well. We also share customer feedback, and we share very openly during our weekly Connects, positive or negative feedback, so we can discuss about lessons learned. And then last but not least, we also try to summarize all this as part of the performance reviews, which happen on a quarterly basis. So gathering that feedback and celebrating the successes is really important. It's much more important to talk about how the feedback and what's happened impacts you going forward. So through that, it's helped us become build this culture of being generous, both internally and with customers. And I'm blessed to be a part of it. So I covered a lot, but I think I want to be respectful of your time as well. I think I'll pause there and open up for questions.